Okay, so today is all about down on the mat. And quick warning, if you have wrist or you have shoulder issues, this is not your day. So I want you to go back and look at one of the prior episodes and look at all month long. We've got plenty of options here for you. So you got to remember, if there's one thing that won't work, there's probably 24 that will. Focus on that. We're going to start doing a plank today. We're going to be all the way up on top. So fingers wide open. You want to make sure that your index finger and your thumb are weight bearing. So you're coming back. Here's a good plank. Here's not a good plank. Here's not a good plank, all right? And I know you get tired, but when you get tired, you need to take a break and just stop. So here's where we're going. Feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart here. And what I want you to do is just to tap the opposite shoulder. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, I want you to hold here and I want you to pay attention. So as I'm doing this, here to here, notice that there's not too much this, right? If I get to a point where I can't help it, then I'm done. I'm tired. Because these muscles, what they're doing is fighting the rotation. So if they're no longer fighting or no longer winning, we're going to stop and take a break. So I'm going to give you a little load off of the wrists and the shoulders for a bit. Because even if you don't have a shoulder issue, weight bearing constantly in this 90-degree flexion or on your shoulders, not something you want to continually do because we're already tending to be shorter and tightened here because of daily activities are all out front and passively long in the back. So I want you to consciously think when you come up this time that you're also retracting your shoulder blades. What I mean by that is you're just drawing them down and together as you're, or it won't be down, but down toward your hips as you're in the plank. So you're staying broad across the chest and not allowing yourself to round. So bring it up again. And this is where if you have a mirror you're able to look at, this is really a beneficial time to do it. If you don't, do what I'm doing. I'm recording right now myself on the camera so you can do it on your phone and you'll see exactly where am I making mistakes. You can either watch it in real time while you're doing it or play it back. So let's come back again. So if I were to do a plank, my feet might be parallel, right under my hips. But if I'm going to do a plank wide, moving the arms, I need that lever to be a little bit wider. Here and here. Good reach and up. So I was cueing a little bit, so I'm not counting, right? Are you counting? We're going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. And again, come down. So I mentioned earlier, anybody with issues right away in their wrist or their shoulder, I didn't mention elbow because it tends to happen a little bit less, but that of course would also be true. It's trapped between, but also the other concern is anybody with a lower back issue. If you don't have sufficient strength in your core, that's going to be problematic because you don't have the support there. Maybe you don't do 20 though, maybe you're still building up. So you can do 6, you can do 8, you can do 10 well, and then you call it, I'm going to do sets of 10 instead of trying to go all the way, but ending up doing them poorly. Okay, now we're going to take it a notch up, and rather than what we were just doing, stabilization, we're going to come up and do a little rotation, bringing one leg through, and then we'll go to the other side. So if I'm up in my plank, what I'm going to do is take this leg and bring it here, and take the other side and bring it over here. Good. Now to make that a little more easy, actually, I'm going to take one hand up. Easy, yes. And for mobility, it is easy. Even though you're on one arm, so that one is doing all the work as opposed to two, you have more room to actually rotate. So both options are good. It just depends on where do you want the work. So I'm going to be rotating a little bit more through the upper back. If I leave both hands down, I have to really turn from it or leverage from it. So how'd you do, right? Now, that transfer of weight from one hand to the other is probably going to put a little bit more pressure on the wrist. So even if you thought, I did just fine earlier, why can't I do this? That's why. So we're pushing or giving a little bit more leverage. Here's a tip though, something to remember. These wrists, as well as your spine and your hip, are what we call the osteozones, the points of most likely to fracture. Now, there are studies done by Dr. Fishman proving that 12 yoga poses, each done for a minute, was beneficial in helping to boost bone density. Now, not many, in fact, were balancing using the wrist, but when you are doing downward facing dog, the benefit of a downward facing dog isn't really bone density for here or through the hip or spine, because these are not bearing load at this point. But what is? Your wrist, your shoulders, your elbows. But that wrist joint is getting a little bit of work. And in today's core exercise, the same is true for that. So those of you who have osteoporosis, however, weight bearing with the upper body like that and doing rotation against it, probably not something I would recommend unless you know exactly what your numbers are. You know exactly if you've built up and progressed to a point where you can handle that additional stress, and or you're beginning to work with a medical exercise specialist who is an expert and has years of experience working with people just like you. Knowing your numbers, what's your DEXA scan, what are those points, where are you with regard to, are you still losing bone mass, have you stopped the loss, are you improving or continuing to get worse? Those questions are really important, and to know how high is your risk factor, because not everybody should be doing the same thing who has osteoporosis. So hope that's helpful. All right, let's do one more set. Coming up, feet a little bit wider. So I'm gonna move forward so you can see that. We're gonna go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Try not to look up, but don't look down. And up, touch, good. Easy, watch the wiggle. Try to keep yourself nice and still and solid. And can you tell? I've lost count. Are you still counting? Hold it right here. You got it? Nice, up, up, and we relax. Beautiful job. All right, I'll be back for tomorrow. I'd love your questions or comments down below, and I'd love to know, was this one appropriate for you, or did you need to skip it? I'll see you on the flip side.